you is to look at your values, your principles, the things that you believe in, and then make an educated decision on that. You know, an analogy I could use is how you talk about Apple all the time. You've never gone out and told anybody how to, you know, what to buy for an iPhone or an iPad. You've talked about your excitement over getting a new product. You've talked about, you know, your disappointment when the battery goes dead, but then they fixed it. Oh, man, it's great, you know. So here I am. I'm out shopping for an iPad because I'm thinking about getting one. But I don't know anybody that calls in and accuses you of being an Apple endorser.
Oh, they're out there. Believe me. They're all kinds of people think I'm shilling, but I'm not. You're right. I don't. I just share my passions with people is all I do.
Right. Well, I'm listening to the things you say about Apple. I like the things that you say. There's some pros, there's some cons. But, you know, Rush, people, if they really listen to you, they'll know who you're voting for. You have to. People want you to tell them how to vote, but they don't want to sit down and look at the things that you believe in and the things they believe in and make an educated decision. The same people that want to slam you every day for not endorsing their candidate, those hardcore people are going to be the same people that won't listen to you when it comes down.
We join you from the Grand Wayne Center in downtown Fort Wayne, Indiana, as we get set for Ted Cruz as he begins to continue on his campaign chase for the White House. We'll have live stream coverage here on WOWO.com coming up relatively soon. Please stand by.
Sharp. And you listen deeply. You're not somebody just catching the surface waves out there, if you would. I appreciate that. And you're absolutely right. To me, the objective is stopping the Democrat Party. I don't know how else to say it. They are the most destructive force in America today. I could make the case that everything many of you think is wrong in this country can be traced back to Democrat Party or American liberal policies or power meaning power over education from K all the way up through the university level to power over the pop culture. But everything that's happening, all the cultural rot that is called tolerance, all the cultural rot that is called modernization and so forth, all of this has origins. And the origins are liberalism, socialism, Democrat Party, you name it. And they have to be stopped. And there is, now, unlike our last caller, I don't think there's anybody running on the Republican side that comes anywhere close to the destructive nature. You don't people on the Republican side that don't like America. They're all over the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party is loaded with people who have never believed in America's greatness and do not want America to be great because they hate capitalism. They hate the founding, whatever. They do not want this country to be great. They do not want this country to be exceptional in any way. They are delusional and deranged in many cases. And these people at one time were college students themselves back in the 1960s. They happen to be running the country today in many ways, in many regards. And to me, that is the ultimate objective, which is why I told Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday, he asked me in a trick question what I thought was going to happen when all this was over. And I said trick question because it's the only one I didn't correctly anticipate that he would ask. And I gave the stock answer on unity that I hope, that when the time comes, everybody's going to realize who the real enemy is. But then that may not happen. You just said that truly principled people put all of that before party. Well, to some people, the party is the principle. To the establishment, the party is everything. Because that's where they are. That's where their careers are. That's where their identity is. That's where their own self-esteem is. It's where their connections are. It's where they matter as being in tight with that entire establishment. So above all else, it must be preserved and held on to. I think one of the biggest myths, if you will, is the idea that the Republican Party is a conservative party. It hasn't been in a long time. Really, you couldn't. Compared to Democrats, maybe. Never have to deal with again, and that's Cruz. Because there are a lot of Cruzes, in the sense there are a lot of principled conservatives out there. There are a lot of people that want to shake up the establishment. There are a lot of Republicans who would like to follow in the footsteps of Cruz. But there's only one Trump, meaning there aren't a whole lot of people out there who could be Donald Trump tomorrow if they wanted to be. But the Republican Party is filled with potential Ted Cruzes. So they don't think they have to worry about another Trump ever again because he's the only one there is. But Cruz, well, there's a lot of potential Cruzes out there. And how do they get rid of them once and for all? And the answer to that is Cruz getting a nomination and losing 50 states. And then they can say, see, we told you. We told you that if you nominated this guy, it was going to be gold. People think he can beat Hillary, and the Trump people think he can beat Hillary, and they think he can beat Hillary in a landslide. We don't have any polling data that shows, but we do. We just got a poll today that shows Trump beats Hillary by 3. First time that's happened. But what a disconnect. Party bigwigs think we are destined to lose big, and the supporters of both Trump and Cruz think their guy can beat Hillary. And I happen to agree with them. And even if I didn't, I wouldn't go conceding anything in freaking May.
The Big Lie stops here. Rush on the EIB Network. Rush Limbaugh, News Talk 1190 WOWO. Now on 107.5 FM. Depend on it.
Key to success. Well, new research says it's grit. Relentlessly pursuing your goals. And if your goal is protecting your family, be relentless in your search for home security. Research compare, you'll see there's no better choice than Simply Safe Home Security. It's everything you need to keep your family safe. With no long-term contracts, no hidden fees, and 24/7 monitoring, only $14.99 a month. Visit simplysafeusa.com right now. Get a 10% discount. simplysafeusa.com.
Are big banks getting ready for a market crash? Here's Kevin Demerit of Lear Capital.
Thanks, Larry. For months now, listeners have heard our reports and seen us on Fox News talking about another crisis. Now we're seeing strong evidence something big is coming.
Like what?
Some of the largest banks are buying huge amounts of physical gold and silver.
Can you tell us who?
Well, J.P. Morgan bought 2,000 tons of silver. HSBC Bank bought 5.9 tons of gold. Goldman Sachs just purchased 7.5 tons of gold, and there are others.
Do you think we're on the verge of another crisis?
Either a major market correction, war, or someone's very nervous about interest rates. It happened in 2001 and 2008. The markets crashed, and then gold and silver prices skyrocketed.
And that's why banks are stockpiling gold and silver now?
Well, we're starting to see something like that. We should all get prepared.
How?
Do what they're doing. Own at least some physical gold and silver. Even a small portion in gold and silver can go a long way toward protecting your IRA and your retirement accounts.
How can people learn more about what's coming and what the big banks banks are doing to prepare.
Well, our team at Lear Capital has assembled some of the industry's best research. Why big banks are stockpiling gold and silver. Listeners, get the report absolutely free. There's no obligation.
Call 1-800-957-GOLD now for your free report why big banks are stockpiling gold and silver. Don't wait. Markets are more shaky now than ever, so call 1-800-957-4653. That's 1-800-957-4653. 800-957-GOLD.
A new year means exciting new changes at DeKalb Health. By partnering with professional emergency physicians, DeKalb Health now offers the same high emergency care offered at area tertiary hospitals, but now in DeKalb County. Led by Medical Director Dr. Tyler Johnson and EMS Medical Director Tom Dykstra, they bring board-certified emergency physicians with extensive emergency care experience to help you if an emergency does arise. You'll be treated in an all-new state-of-the-art 15,000-square-foot emergency facility that has dedicated rooms, including a trauma room, 2 cardiac care rooms, an OBGYN room, and an orthopedic room to ensure you are treated with the highest of care and equipment in a timely manner. You will also find in most instances that by getting treated at DeKalb Health, rates are more affordable and wait times are shorter. Yet you receive the same high-quality advanced care. Now, when you need expert emergency help that is close to home, experience the difference. The difference is at DeKalb Health. DeKalbHealth.com. Promote, preserve, restore.
Updating a bathroom does not mean you have to remodel it completely. You can update and dramatically change the look of your bathrooms affordably with a new custom shower door and mirror from City Glass Specialty. A custom mirror and shower door from City Glass will give your bathroom a whole new look. City Glass can custom make a shower door in any taste and style from traditional to ultra contemporary. Just bring your idea to City Glass and let them create the perfect shower door for you. And at the same time, let them create a custom mirror to add that dramatic touch to your wall and bathroom. Mirrors can help to stretch space, capture light, and reflect the beauty of a room. You will truly have a one-of-a-kind unique design that will be sure to make your guests ask, where did you get that? And you can answer, it was custom created by the craftsmen at City Glass Specialty, located just 1 block south of the Oyster Bar on Calhoun Street. Bring your ideas to City Glass Specialty today and let them start creating your dream shower door and mirror today. For more information, call 744-3601.
Mayor Committee. This is a programming alert. Special Indiana election coverage starts at 2 from the Grand Wayne Center on News Talk 1190 WOWO, now on 107.5 FM.
Jefferson Starship. This is back when you could actually listen to them. Miracles. Miracles. The name of the tune, the title of the tune. Back to the audio soundbites. We got some Trumpsters here, and we got some soundbites from Ted Cruz. This is Trump in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We're up number 5 now. Trump, Fort Wayne, Indiana, at a campaign event talking about our economy and the Chi-Coms.
Don't forget, we're like the piggy bank that's being robbed. We have the cards. We have a lot of power with China. When China doesn't want to fix the problem in North Korea, we say, sorry, folks, you got to fix the problem. Because we can't continue to allow...
We are live at the Grand Wayne Center here this afternoon, awaiting Ted Cruz' arrival as his quest for the White House bid from the GOP continues here this afternoon. In the meantime, please enjoy the Rush Limbaugh program. Please stand by.
Balance of trade. I don't know how many people know why that matters and what the balance of trade is. I mean, I, of course, do. And I'm sure you know it's not good when we end up owing them more than they owe us. But China is raping us. I mean, they own how much of our national debt? You know, if they called in the marker on that, we'd be in heat big doo-doo. That's one of the things he's thinking about. But that's for another time, because there's one other bite that Trump has. I want to comment on this. I may have to continue to comment in the next hour. This was on Fox and Friends weekend on Sunday morning on the Fox News channel. Clayton Morris said in an interview last week, Hillary Clinton talked about how she would deal with a tough general election campaign with you. And she said that she's used to men sometimes going off the reservation, as she knows how to handle them. What do you say to that?
I thought it was a terrible answer. She said, I'm used to dealing with, and what was the word? She used a certain word, men that are off the reservation. And I said to myself, that's a horrible expression. Now, if I would have used that expression maybe in the opposite form, it would have been a front page story. She uses it, she gets away with it. That's a very demeaning remark to men, in my opinion. And I don't even know, was she referring to her husband? I think she was referring to her husband.
Well, that's the interesting thing about this. My original reaction to this was that she was referring to Bill because she's the most cheated on woman in America. And folks, I don't care if that sounds crude. It's just true. At least in public life, she's the most cheated on woman in America. I mean, it might be close with... No, it'd have to be Hillary. I was thinking of a couple Hollywood starlets. But it would have to be Hillary. But maybe she was talking about something else. Maybe she's referring to all these men she's had to deal with in college, at the Rose Law Firm, in state government in Arkansas, the federal government. Maybe she's about all these men. Let me expand on this when I have more time.
Rush Limbaugh pointing the way on the EIB network. Rush Limbaugh, News Talk 1190 WOWO. Now on 107.5 FM. Depend on it.
One of the largest and most profitable fields in business today is corporate training, executive coaching, and speaking. It has become an $11 billion annual industry. Now, if you've been thinking of entering this exploding corporate training market, you need to become certified by the John Maxwell team. I have seen and heard success stories of people who become certified Maxwell corporate trainers, executive coaches, and speakers, and I am impressed. Maxwell is the global authority. They've been at this for more than 40 years. Now, when you become Maxwell certified, you'll be able to profit from this booming business. The fastest growing, largest certification program in the world, the John Maxwell team, has been certifying corporate trainers, executive coaches, and speakers for years, all over the world. Become a Maxwell certified corporate trainer, executive coach, and speaker. Visit johnmaxwellradio.com now for a special free gift. That's johnmaxwellradio.com or dial 1-800-MAXWELL. That's 1-800-MAXWELL.
My dad always told me, be proud of where you're from. So when it was time to start my business, I looked no further than right here, in the town where I grew up.
Fort Wayne HelpWanted.com helps local businesses by helping them find their next great employee.
I mean, the people who live here, they're my neighbors. I know them. I trust them.
At Fort Wayne HelpWanted.com, it's easier than ever to post your job and start getting applicants instantly.
Without my hometown, my business just wouldn't be the same. And I think it works both ways.
Fort Wayne HelpWanted.com. Local jobs that work. If you want to be successful at your job, you have to have an advantage. At Fort Wayne HelpWanted.com, our advantage is the hometown advantage. The advantage local people have when they work where they live. Nobody connects them with local hometown employers better than we do. And nobody has a better selection of local job openings either. Jobs with that hometown advantage. Apply online today and put it to work for you. Fort Wayne HelpWanted.com. Local jobs that work.
Pack.com.
This is WOWO Farm News and commentary on a Senate Environment and Public Works Committee advanced a water infrastructure bill that would reauthorize the Water Resources Development Act. It includes assistance for towns like Flint, Michigan, to address lead levels in their drinking water. The word bill is now set to hit the Senate floor. Now, there was only one vote against it. That was Republican Senator Deb Fischer of Nebraska, who claims it doesn't give any regulatory relief for on-farm storage, and she says an EPA regulation over fuel spills on farmland goes too far, and that EPA overreach is already a heavy burden on farmers and ranchers. Talk coming out of financial circles is that the sector is nervous about Donald Trump's level of disdain for China and Mexico, and that if he's elected to the presidency, his tough stance about trade with those countries could set off a trade war. I'm Rob Winters with Farm News here on News Talk 1180 WOWO and now on 107.5 FM.
This is a programming alert. Special Indiana election coverage starts at 2 from the Grand Wayne Center on News Talk 1190 WOWO, now on 107.5 FM.
Yeah, because when you look at it, in terms of Hillary's career advancement, Bill has never been off the reservation. He's been off the reservation if the reservation is the bedroom. But in terms of her career advancement, he's not been off the reservation. So she might have been just telling us what she thinks of men in general, not to mention what she thinks of Indians.
On Saturday, May 7th, Mike's Car Wash is donating half the proceeds of all Ultimate and Works washes to Big Brothers Big Sisters. That's $10 for every Ultimate wash and $8 for every Works wash. So stop by any Mike's from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. and do something small that makes a big difference. On Saturday, May 7th, Mike's Car Wash is donating half the proceeds of all Ultimate and Works washes to Big Brothers Big Sisters. That's $10 for every Ultimate wash and $8 for every Works wash. So stop by any Mike's from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. and do something small that makes a big difference.
Are you the kind of person looking around for something that says, I was here and I made this myself? Oak Tree Supplies in Huntertown is where you ought to be looking. OaktreeSupplies.com. They carry the absolute best when it comes to tools. Festool, the Mercedes-Benz of power tools. Whether you're an outright beginner in woodworking and metalworking, or you're in the industry and you use tools as a way of making your living, Oak Tree Supplies has the right tool for you. If you're just starting out, instruction is everything. They have special classes you can find out about at OaktreeSupplies.com. And if you have employees or even yourself and you want to keep everybody safe, check out this product, SawStop. Oak Tree Supplies, a really interesting store in Huntertown, Indiana on Plank Street. Oak Tree Supplies has those hard-to-find woods, adhesives, and the products that you need to really make a masterpiece. OaktreeSupplies.com.
Stop Trump from getting to 1,237 delegates before the convention. Bernie Sanders also fighting for Indiana votes and hoping for a contested convention.
Our ideas, the political revolution transforming America, are the ideas for the future of this country and the future of the Democratic Party.
As Hillary Clinton works on a possible weak spot, coal country, campaigning in West Virginia and Kentucky. Virginia Republicans say they'll file a lawsuit over the governor's move to let thousands of convicted felons vote. Fox Radio's Rachel Sutherland live in D.C.
Lisa, Democratic Governor Terry McAuliffe issued an executive order restoring voting rights to more than 200,000 convicted felons who will be able to cast ballots in the November election. Republican lawmakers claim the move is politically motivated because McAuliffe is a known friend of Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. They've hired a lawyer claiming McAuliffe overstepped his authority. In addition to voting rights, the executive order also restores the rights of ex-cons to run for public office and sit on a jury. Lisa.
Thanks, Rachel. A group of franchise business owners is disappointed the U.S. Supreme Court won't hear a challenge to Seattle's $15 an hour minimum wage law. The group argued they're being treated like large businesses when they're actually small businesses. Fox News Radio, fair and balanced.
This is News Talk 1190 WOWO, now on 107.5 FM. Depend on it.
I'm Tom Franklin. Our top local story. We're getting set for not one but two rallies this afternoon. This hour, Ted Cruz will host a rally that we'll be covering live on WOWO starting this hour. Special coverage with Pat Miller and Ryan Record starts right after this newscast. Meanwhile...
Whew, how is everybody? Good? Feeling good? Turn around and show the cameras your signs, everybody. Show them your signs there. That's awesome. Very, very awesome. How insane is this week in Fort Wayne, Indiana, huh? Man. Everywhere you go, you got national media. I've been telling everybody in every restaurant I go into, I'm Todd Starnes. I've been eating for free all week. It's incredible. I suggest you try it. Here's some names. Jeff Manasso would work. Yeah, Anderson Cooper, anybody that's blonde. I'm Anderson Cooper. They'll feed you for free. George Stephanopoulos, if you can say it. Yeah. Hard to say after you've been at Eddie's bar for a while, but understand that. Well, anyway, we're all glad that you're here today. We've got some incredible special guests. I'm horrible at keeping secrets, so I can't tell you any of the special guests that are here. Most of you probably already know. So don't, tell anybody or you'll spoil the surprise. But it's great to be here with you today. I want to introduce to you a very good friend of mine who is an attorney, the Allen County Republican Party chairman, but most importantly, to me, He's my number one fill-in, so if he doesn't fill in for me, I don't get to take any vacation. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Shine.
Thank you, Charlie. Good to see you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Is this a great time to be a Republican in Allen County or what? My name is Steve Shine. I am the chairman of the Allen County Republican Party. And I am here today not in support of any given presidential candidate, but as chairman to all. I'm here for the same reason that I was at yesterday's political rally, and that being to thank all of you for your hard work and effort on behalf of Republican candidates and the Republican Party. Thank you so much to all of you for making us so successful. And it is because of you that the Allen County Republican Party is the state's premier county political organization. And because of you, our 3rd district is the most Republican congressional district in the state of Indiana. And we're also one of the top 100 Republican congressional districts in the United States, all because of you. Your commitment to Republican beliefs and principles have made our community great. Now, I've had the pleasure of personally meeting with both of tomorrow's presidential candidates, and after speaking with both of them, I can assure you one thing is for certain. There will be no President Clinton in 2017. Thank you again. Thank you for being a Republican.
Nice round of applause, Steve Shine, everybody. By the way, while you're applauding, you know, we in the media, we like to whine. What a long week this has been. Can we get a round of applause for these men in blue here? Because these guys, a lot of overtime. Oh, my goodness. You, sir, I thought Bernie Sanders had joined us for just a second. I thought, oh, no, am I in the wrong spot? I'm out here introducing Ted Cruz and his Bernie Sanders rally? Oh, my goodness. Which would be something I would do. Time now for invocation. The senior pastor of the Destiny Dome Embassy, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Oscar Underwood.
Everybody stand with me, please. And before we bow our heads and pray, because our republic is a republic of people who believe in God, who believe in miracles, and our party, the Republican Party, we know that God has our back. And so I'm going to tell you before we pray today, clap your hands like you've never clapped your hands in your life unto our God. Please bow with me. Heavenly Father, we come now. We're people who are excited, a people who believe, a people who understand that nothing is impossible for us because nothing is impossible for our God. We thank you for our republic. We thank you that our republic still works. We thank you for our Republican Party. We thank you that our Republican Party still works because our values and the things that we believe in are your values and your precepts. And we thank you, Father God, for 2 Chronicles 20, verse 15, 16, and 17. And while we will support whoever comes from our party in obedience to you today, I say this, the words that you gave King Jehoshaphat, I speak for the campaign of Senator Ted Cruz. Your words were, don't be discouraged. Don't be afraid. Tomorrow, march out against them. You won't have to fight in this battle, for the battle is not yours. The battle belongs to the Lord. Take your position. Oh, Republican Party. Oh, Senator Cruz. Oh, campaign in this city who wants God's way and God's agenda done. Do not be discouraged. Do not be afraid. for God is with you. God is with our party. God is with our republic. And therefore we go boldly, believing in the God that is able to use a slingshot to bring down the giant. We thank you. The impossible is ours. In the name of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Jesus Christ, his son, we say amen, and we give you all the glory and all the praise. We clap our hands again because we're not ashamed of you. In Jesus' name. Come on, you can do better than that. Open your mouth. Praise him right now. God bless you.
Dr. Oscar Underwood. Now, I heard for a brief moment there was a young child that was crying, and then somebody went, shh, don't shush him. We've been crying for 8 years. You know what I mean? It's all right to cry, but I don't think we're going to be crying much longer. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you, and I have to do this carefully, Indiana Senator Dennis Cruz.
If you would all please stand, we'd like to have the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag at this time. Repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You can remain standing if you would, please. Our next item.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Abigail Eschelbach, who is the Operations Director for Allen County Right to Life and our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Abigail Eschelbach, Allen County Right to Life. All right, now it is an honor for me, but if anybody has some questions about Pat Miller, I'd be more than glad to answer them for you. Anybody inside scoop on Pat Miller at all? Pardon me? Yeah, he texts me all the time when we're on TV. It's really a problem. I'd not like to complain in public about it, but we've taken it up in the past a couple of times. We are so lucky to have a guy like Pat Miller working at News Talk 1190. Well, I personally, I'm a fan of talk radio, so I listen to talk radio all across the country. And I got to tell you that we're lucky here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, to have a talk show host of the quality on local radio of Pat Miller. My friend, ladies and gentlemen, Pat Miller. That's $5 if you would. Just $5.
I'll send it to you by text.
Okay.
Hello, Fort Wayne! You have to send him a text now and then. I don't know if you've heard Charlie when he's on his own. It's not that good. So Now, look, why are you all here? We're only supposed to have a couple hundred. You realize this guy doesn't have his own jet, right? Okay, and you realize he's not going to be calling any of you names or making fun of women or making fun of minorities. There's not going to be any of that. All you're going to get today is you're going to get a guy in a little while on this platform that loves his Constitution, he loves his family, he loves his country. That's what he's going to have. It'll be my joy to introduce a few people as we go throughout the afternoon here before we get to the big moment. And I'm looking forward. How many of you were here last week when Ted Cruz was in the building? You notice there's a few more here now? Did you? Yeah. And just so you know, and don't be upset with me, but just so you know, because a lot of people stopped me and they said, when is the Marlin Stutzman event? Just so you know, there's an event for Marlin tonight at 7 right across the street at Parkview Field. So make sure you get over there. Another guy that loves his country. But right now, to kick us off and to say a little bit more, a guy who loves people and loves life. He's a member of Shepherds United. He's the president of the Missionary Church here in Fort Wayne. Please welcome Steve Jones.
Good afternoon. Wow, they couldn't fill this room any tighter, could they? This is a political season of a couple of firsts for me. I have voted since I was allowed to vote. How many of you have voted since you were allowed to vote? Look around for a minute. Just look around for a minute. I love that. And I have voted Republican for 40, well, too many years. Too many years. And I'm proud to vote Republican, but I tell you something, this is a season of firsts for me because two firsts. Number one, I have never registered as a Republican. And I want to tell you why. As a pastor and a follower of Jesus Christ, I'm kind of a kingdom man. And one thing that I do know is that politics is not the solution to the world's problems. Would you agree with that? We know that's not the case. However, as I've become older and watched, I have seen politics may not be the solution to the world's problems. As a follower of Jesus, I say he is the only solution to the world's problems. And I love him for it. I love him for it. But I've noticed that politics can make things worse. Would you agree with that? I've always wanted to vote as a kingdom man. And so, although I can honestly say I've voted Republican every time I think that I've walked in that booth for 40 years, I've always said I am not going to say I stand for this party or that party, but for these issues. And every single time that I've done that and walked into that voting booth, including, by the way, this morning down at the courthouse, I've said, down at the city-county building, I've said to myself, you know, who is it who is for life from conception to natural death? The Republican Party. And who is it that's for strong families and traditional family structures? The Republican Party. It's not been hard for me to pull that lever. But this time around, something different happened in me. And that is this. I began to realize that you can have a choice as to which Republican Party member is the one that nearest represents our values. I came to a place where I said, you know what? I can't stand by and just be passive and say, well, I wonder who they're going to, did you hear that word, they? I wonder who they are going to choose for us to vote for. And to be honest with you, as I've watched this election, as I've watched this thing, and you've all, how many of you have watched this closely all along? I have watched since we had more candidates than are in this room right now, right? And it's narrowed down, and it's narrowed down, and it's narrowed down. And some scriptures started to bubble up in my mind. And one of them was this: God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And I began to think to myself, I wonder which candidate falls in which category. That wasn't a hard thing for me to figure out. And if God opposes the proud, then I begin to ask myself, do I want someone in the Oval Office that God opposes? Because how many people can be successful? How many nations? Our nation is successful if it's a nation that what? Follows God. And to the extent that we decide not to follow God, we have made our own decision. Isn't that right? And so as we look at this, we say, okay, Lord, we have a representative form of government. We're not like Caesar, where we didn't have a choice. Caesar was born, Caesar was raised, and everybody else was peasants. But we are the ones who get to decide who our leaders are. What a wonderful country. So as we think about it and begin to decide, I look at a certain candidate and I say, if that candidate were to be in the Oval Office and to brag and to boast, would God oppose him or would God help him? And I already know the answer because I've read the Bible. Another verse that began to bubble up to me was a verse that said, you cannot serve both, what did Jesus say? God and money. And so I began to look at our candidate choices and say to myself, is there any way I can figure out if one of them has been serving money instead of God? And so I began to read the comments because I don't like to go by what the media necessarily says. I want to hear what the person says. Would you agree with that? I want to hear the person. And so from the mouth of one of these candidates, I heard, I can tell you I am extremely rich. And I thought to myself, wait, that's two of the categories that I'm concerned about. The proud and the serving of money. And that same candidate said, you know, the beautiful thing about me is I'm very, very rich. And I thought of the person that the Bible calls the rich fool, who says they have what they need. And I began to think to myself, Lord, is it time for me to break my little self-imposed rule that I would not register and vote in a primary? Because, friends, it matters the character of the person that is going to represent us. Somebody back here a few minutes ago said we've had people like that in the White House. I have to admit we have. The one problem with the representative form of government is this: it represents us as a nation. When we get certain people in the White House, we think, how could that be? And the answer is, reality check. It represents the snapshot of who we are right now as a nation. And if you, like me, are troubled by that, if you, like me, are concerned and say, I don't want that to be what our nation actually is reflected to look like, then we need to pray and we need to make decisions that we are going to vote. Would you agree with that? And that's why we're here. The second first for me in this political season is that I have decided for the first time in my life as a minister of the gospel that I will endorse a candidate. I came to it by conscience. If I felt like the Lord didn't want me to do it, and if I felt, I'm supposed to render unto Caesar what's Caesar's, and to God what is God's. And I am made in God's image, so are you. And so we have to render to God what's God's first. But he also said, didn't Jesus, render to Caesar what's Caesar's? And in our nation, the participatory, conversational dialogue and debate that brings us to a decision on a leader is absolutely Caesar's, and God said, render that, do that, be a part of that. And so as I've looked at the choices that we have, I think all of us would agree this is a momentous time. This may be the most important election in my lifetime, and very likely in your lifetime too. And I think that's being reflected because my wife and I went down to vote this morning because we're going to be in Michigan tomorrow. We went down to vote this morning, early voting. We waited in line for an hour and a half, and there were more people when we left than when we got there. Now, that's not like that all the time. And we're glad it's like that. Unless only the people who don't follow the Lord's values show up. Right? And so after a lot of consideration, I began to say, I talked to my wife. I said, honey, I think maybe I need to do more. For the first time in my life, I think maybe I need to do more. And I had some contact from the Cruz campaign, and we were in Florida a week ago today. And it was morning. I was getting ready to go to my meeting, and Senator Cruz's father, Raphael, called me on the phone out of the blue. I didn't know him. I didn't know he was going to call. I got a Texas call, and I thought, who was that? And I answered the phone, and it was Raphael Cruz. How many of you have heard him on TV or radio or in person? First of all, that voice is distinctive, right? And you say, okay, I know who that is. And he came on the phone, and he said, Pastor, can we talk? And we talked for 25 minutes. And at the end of that time, I said to myself, if Senator Ted Cruz has been raised under a man who cannot say 3 sentences without scripture and supporting reference, that man is thoroughly steeped in the scriptures. He is. I have no doubt about that. I have no doubt about that. I would begin to say a scripture, and he would say the reference. And I'd say, oh, yeah, that's a brother right there. He knows the word. And as we began to talk, he shared with me something that he shared with some of you. And he said, in God's design, authority flows from God to God's people. And then God's people give that authority to government. And he said what happened was in the Old Testament, people decided they wanted a king. They wanted someone that looked big and looked strong and looked powerful. And so they said, we want a king, we want a king. And so what happened, you know the story in Israel. They clamored for a king, and they reversed it. So authority began to flow from God to a king, to the government, and then to the people. And Raphael said, so many of our problems have come because that reversal. Authority was supposed to go from God to the people to the government. And that's the way our government was founded. Would you agree with that? And what's happened is it's been reversed. And now it goes from God to the government, and they decide how much authority we have. And I do not believe that is pleasing to God, and I don't believe it's the way that America should go in the future. And so I would like to see someone in the White House. I would like to see someone in the White House who knows the Word of God and is committed to the Word of God, and who says, you know what, authority does flow from God. When Raphael called, I said to him, the one thing I really want to know is this. Will Senator Cruz in the White House humble himself before God and frequently say, I don't know what to do, but my eyes are on you? And he said to me, that's how we've lived our lives. And he will do that. And I believed him. I believe him. The last thing I want to say before I wrap up my remarks is this. We in the faith community have prayed for 20 years that some people would be sent to Washington who could not be compromised. Have we prayed that? Because how many of us have been disappointed because so many times we put someone into office in Washington and then we go, they wilted. You know what I'm saying? So we prayed for someone that would not compromise. I never prayed for Senator Ted Cruz because I'm not in that state. I didn't even know who he was. But I noticed that when he went to Washington, guess what? He would not, what? Compromise. He stopped the government. Remember? Remember? He stopped it. In my mind, he was like that picture we've seen of the one man standing with all the tanks at Tiananmen Square. And I thought to myself, interesting, a man who's willing to take the pressure. And then I began to hear the other senators say, we don't like him because he won't what? We can't stand how he won't. And I thought to myself, that's the guy we've been praying for. Someone who won't compromise. And so, friends, brothers, and sisters, I am pleased for the first time in my life to stand before you and not only vote for, but endorse Senator Ted Cruz.
Steve Jones. Somebody who has fought a lot for the family, and that's something that matters to Senator Cruz and to Carly Fiorina, by the way. Don't you like those two names together? Cruz and Fiorina? You know, sometimes you can tell the quality and character of a person by the decisions they make. I like the fact that he got to Indianapolis and said, it's time to make a good decision, and he picked Carly Fiorina. That's pretty good stuff right there. But one thing that Ted Cruz has always done, will always do, you'll hear it in a little while here today, is that is he stands for your family and my family. From the Indiana Family Association, I'm glad to bring out Kurt Smith. Kurt?
Thank you very much. What a great crowd. Fun to be back in Fort Wayne. Is this Cruz country today? Absolutely. Boy, you are a beautiful crowd. This is my 4th or 5th event to help the senator out, and I think this is our best crowd yet, so way to go. Indiana will have a very outsized role to play this year in the presidential nomination, and tomorrow is the key day as we go to the voting booth. Some of us have voted already. As you've heard, the lines have been long. If you're voting tomorrow, go early because lots of people are interested. And not only is Indiana going to have an outsized role, but I believe Fort Wayne, northeastern Indiana, will have an outsized role within Indiana. So it's great to see so many of you here today. Thanks for coming out and supporting Senator Cruz. As Charlie mentioned, my name is Kurt Smith. I work with the Indiana Family Institute, but here in the city where I lived for many years and where I have many friends, I'm better known to some of you as the father of Andrew Smith, the Butler basketball player who fought cancer for years. And unfortunately, Andrew did not make it, and this January he passed away. But I would be remiss standing in front of so many of you faithful folks who prayed for our family to not say thank you for being great friends, great neighbors, and faithful prayer partners in that challenging, difficult journey as we watched our son battle leukemia. So thanks for coming out, and in a sense, that's really what we're doing today for Senator Cruz. We're going to show him some Hoosier hospitality. The need is great, the hour is late, but we do have the right candidate. And I think we can be confident about what's going to happen here because Senator Cruz has spent the better part of 2 weeks with us here in Indiana, and I think Hoosiers will respond to that kind of respectful attention. He also named his running mate here, Carly Fiorina. I think it's a great choice, a wonderful choice. Can we hear a round of applause for Carly? Yeah. And when they're in the White House, in the Oval Office, cleaning up the mess of the last 8 years, I think we can all say very proudly that the Cruz administration will have a label that says Made in Indiana right on it. Now, that means we need to do our job. So I think they asked the family guy to come up here and have a little family chat for a couple minutes. We need to get our friends and family out to vote tomorrow. When you go home today, post on social media, call friends. I talked to my nephew-in-law yesterday about voting for Senator Cruz. I don't think he's ever voted in a primary. He looked kind of confused when I talked to him about it, but he's going to try to figure out if he's registered and see if he can go vote tomorrow. I hope you'll do that with all of your friends, all of your family, associates, neighbors, people you work with, churches, Bible studies, community organizations. All the research in the political science annals show us that the #1 predictor that someone will vote for a candidate is a person they know and respect tells them they're voting for that person. So when you tell someone you're supporting Senator Cruz, it can have a huge, huge impact, and we need that kind of a turnout tomorrow. This is our hour for common sense, constitutional conservatives to really shine here in the state of Indiana. And if we do that, tomorrow evening, just a little over 24 hours from now, the network talking heads will come on, and their message will be very simple. Trump failed, Kasich bailed, Cruz prevailed. And then all of us, we can look right in that camera and do what we have to do under federal law and say, we're Hoosiers, we approve this message. Just remember that. Trump failed, Kasich bailed, Cruz prevailed. Now, I'm a policy wonk, and as I thought through the senator, I looked at all of his positions and checked things, and you're going to hear from him in a few minutes, and you're going to be impressed, not only that his views align with Hoosiers, with your thinking on the important issues of the day, jobs, security, freedom, but he's also plain spoken, and you can just tell how resolute he is. So as I look through those policy issues, as important as that is to me, I realize there's something else about this gentleman that's very, very impressive. He is quite accomplished. Just think about it. He has a car named for him, the Chevy Cruz. He has a missile named for him, the Cruz missile. Just about every car and truck on the road today has cruise control. And there's a whole type of vacation called a cruise named after him. It's amazing. Very, very accomplished. One of his Harvard professors, law professors, said he was the best student he ever had, and that was one of the most liberal professors there. So he's very, very, very accomplished. And as you hear him talk about the issues in a minute, you're going to find out that he will not only support the Constitution, he will support the First Amendment and our religious liberties. He will support the Second Amendment and our right to bear arms. And you can go down the list. He supports the Third and the Fourth. But maybe the most important one, given where we are today, he will support and fight for the 10th Amendment, which says the states and the people are co-sovereigns with the federal government. And we're going to quit. And we're going to quit having the federal government run roughshod over all the states and send us unfunded mandates and all kinds of other problems. So Indiana, we need to do this. America needs us. This is our hour. This is Cruz country. And tomorrow, when the results come in, we want to be able to tune in and listen to them as they say, Trump failed, Kasich bailed, and Cruz prevailed. Thank you for coming out and supporting Senator Cruz. God bless you.
Thank you, Kurt. What a great line. Kurt. I'm going to take just a minute. Everybody okay? Having a good time? Doing all right? A thought occurred to me because, oh, that's all right. Thank you. Do you have something in pine? I didn't ask for that. So, hi. Has Steve Shine already been on? Okay, well, then that's not for him. In 1776, we signed a Declaration of Independence. Yes? And when they signed it, when the 56 guys signed it, do you really think that they signed it? I mean, can you see Hancock putting his big signature on there, telling the other guys, guys, come here. Let's sign this. This is really cool. Someday this thing's going to hang in a library in Allen County, Indiana. No. They signed a document to send to the King of England, who was the leader of the greatest empire on the planet at the time, basically saying, thanks, but no thanks. We are on our own. Here's the deal. It is one thing to make a declaration, but then you have to be willing to pay for it. We fast forward from July the 4th of 76 to Christmas of 76. George Washington and two other generals are meeting with their men. Now, Washington, I'm going to put this gingerly, we have children in the crowd, has had his butt kicked. He was kicked out of Brooklyn, kicked across Manhattan, kicked all the way through New Jersey, His army was an absolute mess. What was 32 to 35,000 men is now down to about 2,500. A third of them don't even have boots. They're taking burlap and wrapping it around their feet and lashing it around the ankles. They said that in the winter, when it was so cold and frozen and there was ice and snow on the ground, you could always tell where Washington's army had gone because you could see the blood trails in the snow. They're getting ready for the strongest move of the entire war up to this point. Washington says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to cross the river, and we're going to do it in the dead of night. When we get to the other side, the 800 German soldiers that are over there, mercenaries hired by Britain that are watching that fort on the other side, we're going to surprise them. We're going to conquer them. We're going to take their armaments. We're going to take their food. We're going to take their boots. And then the revolution will go on from the air. The other two generals said, you are out of your mind. Washington looked at them and said, do you realize that if this thing dies, they're going to take us and hang us all anyway? The other two generals on the night of crossing the river never even showed up. General Washington looked at his men and he gave them the password for the night. He said, the password for tonight is victory or death. And he meant every word. Because George Washington said, and later wrote in his own diary, he said, I knew standing that night, getting ready to cross that frozen river with men, some of them not even with shoes on their feet, to go to the other side. I knew if we didn't have victory that night, it was all over. The future of this new nation is hanging by a thread. I would suggest to you today, this many years later, the future of this same great nation hangs by a thread. That night, Washington crossed. It took longer to cross than they thought because they didn't cross at the spot they thought they were. They had to go through two ravines, not one. When they got to the other side, it was dawn. The element of surprise is gone, except for one thing, and this is where you see one more time, my dear brothers and sisters, the hand of God in the birth of this great nation. They said that night that the storm was so severe, the sleet was so horrible, the snow was coming down sideways. It was so awful that the German leaders said to their guards, guys, come inside tonight. Nobody in their right mind would be out on a night like this. You know what? You don't always have to be right-minded. You just have to be right. You just have to be right. And that army that had gone from over 30,000 down to 2,500, in the next 2 weeks, over 20,000 signed back up. And victory after victory after victory. And the only general that said, we need to do this or the nation dies, becomes this nation's first, and I believe one of the three greatest presidents that we've ever had, George Washington. Something that we say to each other, or we hear it on whatever news channel you flip to every 4 years. This is the most important election of our lifetime. I will tell you, I have never seen an election where so much hangs in the balance, where so many are so willing to say and do almost anything to sway public opinion, up to and including the most vile and highest level of lying I've ever heard in my entire adult life. And I look around to my family and my wife and I, as we prayed in bed last night, getting ready to go to sleep, we prayed. I'll tell you what we did. We prayed for the Cruzes. We prayed for the Fiorinas. I prayed for the Stutzmans. I prayed for my governor. I said, never before, I don't believe, since George Washington, never has the future of my nation hung in the balance. Never have we been hanging like a thread like we are right now. For the first time in our life, I have a great friend, Brian, down here with his two sons. Brian is in big jeopardy because he runs the risk tonight of being able to not do something that every other parent could do all throughout the history of our nation. Every parent throughout history was able to look at their kids and say, you can go where you want to go and become whatever you want to become. I'm going to hand you a nation better than the one that was handed to me, and I'm not sure we can say that anymore. we better stop this. We better turn this around. Look, I get the phrase, make America great again. You want to make America great again? Then make America constitutional again. And that will make America great again. Somebody that understands that is somebody who changed my life a few years ago when we got together. Do you remember the Rally for America? Do you remember that? He was in our studio today. He's here today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Glenn Beck.
Hello, Fort Wayne. How are you? So glad to be with y'all. How are you? I love the story that Pat told, but he left out my favorite part, and that is about Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine was the guy who was really responsible for the American Revolution in the first place. Thomas Paine was the guy who wrote Common Sense, something that we are sorely lacking in America. When we are actually debating with trillions and trillions of dollars of debt, with ISIS that wants to behead us, literally crucifying children. We have no common sense as a country if we're arguing whether a man can go into a woman's restroom or not. We are a country hell-bent on suicide, if that's our national priority. He wrote Common Sense, and it was 1776. It was so popular that 90% of every home, 90% of all the homes in America had at least one copy of Common Sense. Everyone read it. And his case was, look, guys, it ain't that hard. It's really not that hard. You know that the things that are happening today are wrong. You know that the king has too much power. You know that man was born to be free. You know that you have a right to your own property. You know it's common sense that when you work hard, the government should be out of your way and you should be able to keep the fruit of your labor. That was Thomas Paine's common sense. That was his common sense. You know they don't have a right to just take your stuff without charging you, with just coming into your house and taking you and putting you in prison. We're now talking about, well, we could take Hillary and put her in prison. That would be okay. We're now talking about a government that I think it's 23 attorney generals around the country are now looking into, if you speak out against climate change, you can go to jail. This is, I mean, honestly, that's breathtaking. That's not America. That's how much trouble we're in. And it's easy, at least it was, at the time of Common Sense, Thomas Paine wrote that and everybody said, yeah, let's go get them. It was the biggest army and navy in the world. Let's go get them. We'll declare our independence. And there were 20,000 soldiers. And as Pat said, by the time we got down to the Delaware, we were on the southern side of the Delaware. We were running. And Congress had already, like all weasels in Congress do, they had already evacuated Philadelphia. And the soldiers were hot on the heels, and nobody wanted to march with George Washington. But it wasn't George Washington's plan that got everybody into the boat. Somewhere, marching behind Washington, was Thomas Paine, marching in the mud, listening to the drummer. And he heard in his head, as he is tired
and he is watching the men around him being broken. These are the times that try men's souls. He was looking at that time for the winter patriot, not the summer soldier. The summer soldier that said, yeah, let's go get him. It was easy. But now that we're in the mud, now that there's actual blood on the streets, now that our lives and our farms, our fortunes, and our sacred honor are really on the line, now you know these are the times that try men's souls, and we see who you are. Are you a summer soldier or a winter patriot? And those who are winter patriots will be forever remembered by their countrymen as patriots. They will always be the ones that we look back to on history and say, it was that 10% that changed the world. Because that's all it was 10%. 10% of Americans said, I'm in and I'm all in, and we changed the world. That's all it takes. But it takes real commitment. It takes getting kicked in the head time and time and time again. It takes a people of profound and unwavering faith. Last night I wrote on Facebook and announced it on radio today, and Drudge immediately put it up as a mock. I asked America, not for any candidate, but please, beginning tonight until tomorrow night, for you, because the country is in your hands. I come to you as a dad. My children's future is in your hands, in your neighbor's hands. Whether my children are free will be on your heads. I come to you to beg you. And last night, I asked the nation to please fast, pray, humble yourself, and beg the Lord's forgiveness. We need divine protection now, unlike any time we have needed it since 1860. We must be a God-fearing people. We must know where this giant leap for mankind came from. It didn't come from us, it came from Him. And the reason why we don't know who George Washington is because the progressives erased him. They erased him for a reason. Up until the 1920s, everyone who graduated from the 8th grade had to memorize his farewell address. His farewell address talks about everything that we're going through right now. Don't spend too much money. Don't spend what you don't have. Don't get into foreign entanglements. Don't do it. Is most important. Don't listen to the parties. Don't assign your loyalty to the parties. Assign your loyalty to the principles of this nation. Had we remembered that, had we been taught that and memorized that, we wouldn't be in the place we are today. But had we also remembered who George Washington was, we'd have more courage than we have today. How many of the people that we have been standing next to for the last 8 years that we thought had our principles have now gone off because they're too angry, they're too tired? That doesn't make them bad people. It means that our job is harder, but it only takes 10% to change the world. But George Washington, he got kicked in the head over and over and over again. But he knew that he was a servant of the people. He knew he was a servant. He had his right perspective ever since he was a kid. When he was a kid, he was 12 or 13 years old, and he wanted to join the Royal Navy. Thank goodness for us that he didn't do that. Would have been on the wrong side. But he wanted to join the Royal Navy, and his mother didn't want him to, but he joined anyway. And he went up on the gangplank, and he put his trunk down on next to all the other soldiers, and he stood there, and his mother was down at the bottom of the gangplank on the land, and she made a big fuss. "Oh, George, please, no, don't leave me, George, no." And you just see the other soldiers going, "Dude, I can see why you want to go to the ocean." And he listened to her for a while. And she went on, and finally he picked up his stuff and he walked down to the gangplank and he set it down next to her. And he said, "Mother, if this is where you require me, this is where I shall be." From that moment, his service became his number one priority. And he served his whole life. He didn't want to be the general. He didn't want to be the president. He begged people, "Don't make me the president." He begged people, please don't make me the general. When he finally won the Revolutionary War, he was alone. His soldiers loved him, at the same time hated him. He was alone when he won the war. Now remember, he's the only president in his second term to win by 100%. That's how revered he was. But right after the war, his soldiers were angry. Because they were angry, get this one, you're going to find this hard to believe. They were angry because Congress had screwed them. Congress didn't do what they said they would do. Congress went and decided to spend money elsewhere and not give it to the soldiers, not pay the soldiers. And they were hungry, they had no shoes. They had weathered the storm of all storms, and they had beaten the greatest armies and navies the world had ever seen. And so they were a little cocky. And George Washington rides off at the end of the war, and he rides off to Congress. And he's like, "Guys, they're coming for you. And I'm not necessarily thinking that's a bad idea. They're coming." One congressman comes to him and says, "General, I give you my word, and here is my written promise. I will make sure they are paid." That's all he could get from Congress. One person. He puts it in his pocket, and he is riding back, and he realizes that's not going to be enough. He gets to a tent. It was called the Temple of Honor, and it's where his soldiers would meet, they would have dinner, they would talk, they would pray. And he knew that they were in this tent and they were plotting against the government, the brand new government that had just been set free. And he knew they were in there because they'd never do it around him. He got off his horse and he looked around and he said, "Where is everyone?" Nobody said anything, and he made his way to that tent. He walked into the tent, and he said, "Gentlemen, I know what you're planning on doing. And I know how angry you are. I know how violated you feel. I know how betrayed and how you feel like you've been stabbed in the back by the people in Philadelphia, by the people who are now our government. And we just threw tyrants out, and you feel that they're a tyrant again. But you can't do this. We didn't overthrow one tyrant. Listen carefully. We didn't overthrow one tyrant just to replace him with another tyrant. The parallels of our country, history repeats itself. You cannot replace one tyrant with another. That's not what we fought this war for. We fought this war for principles. And even though those guys are going to hack you off, we're going to do the right thing. Well, his troops wouldn't listen to him. He didn't know what else to say. Then he remembered he had that letter in his pocket. And he thought, maybe they'll listen to this one guy. He took that letter out of his pocket. He opened it up. and realized I can't read it without my glasses. No one had ever seen George Washington in his glasses. George Washington, they believed he was almost a god. He would come off the battlefield, not kidding you, with a hole through his jacket here, a hole through his jacket here, a hole through his hat here, and he had no marks on him. He was on the biggest white horse in the front. A 6.5-foot guy going, "Come on, bring it on." And he was never shot. So he was not only the indispensable man, he was a man that he was legendary. He could do anything. And then he stood there and he did this. And for the first time, his troops saw him as an old man. It broke his heart, and it broke theirs. And as he looked up with tears in his eyes, he said, "I am sorry, but my eyes have grown weary in the service of my country." He couldn't say another word. He took his glasses off and walked out. The men wept for about an hour, and they were still mad at him that he wouldn't join them. But they did not overthrow and replace one tyrant with another. When he finally left to go home, all he ever wanted to do was be a farmer in Mount Vernon. He had won the war. He was done with service. And he leaves. And that's when the Articles of Confederation were too weak. And the country was tearing itself apart. States were arguing with each other. People, neighbors against neighbors. No one would listen to each other. Anarchy was starting to rule. And the rider came to Mount Vernon in the middle of the night in a rainstorm and got off his horse and walked up to the front door of Mount Vernon. And in the middle of the night, George Washington came down, opened the door, and greeted the man. He said, "General, you have to come to Philadelphia. The country's breaking apart. Everything we worked for, everything you fought for is about to fall apart. We're not going to make it. The states, we can't get any of them to sit together in the same room anymore. Some want a constitution, some want the Articles of Confederation, some just want to be left alone. No one can pull them together. Everyone has tried. You are the only man, because of your honor and your integrity. You're the only man that can do it." And George Washington, who had served his entire life, stood at the door and looked that man in the eyes and said, "Have I not yet done enough for my country?" And closed the door. The first time George Washington ever said anything like that. Now I see him in my mind's eye, walking away from that door, doing what all of us do when we're arguing with God. He went upstairs, he got dressed, packed a bag, got into his horse before the sun came up and rode to Philadelphia. And he said nothing. The entire convention, he said very little. Until at the very end, when the states were arguing and looking for a deal maker. See if this sounds familiar. Looking for somebody just to get the thing going again. Can't somebody just make a deal? And Ben Franklin, who was so sick, 88 years old, so sick, and had morphine in him all the time. His letters at the end are so tragic, such a beautiful mind. And his letters are all written towards the end and curved down off the side of his page. And they all say things like, "Morphine, don't ever take it. Opium is so horrible to the mind." He was in so much pain, they actually had to carry him in a chair, a padded chair, because it was too painful for him to walk on the cobblestones. And they brought him in every day, and he sat in the back. And as the states began to look for a deal maker, he stood up and said, "Stop it. Stop it. We didn't come this far for a deal." They still argued. And they were at an impasse. And the country was about to be lost when George Washington finally shifted in his seat. And he stood up and he said these words: "Let us raise a standard to which the wise and the honest can repair." The event, it's in the hand of God. Those are the words that gave birth to the Constitution. Those are the words that hushed the room and everyone came together. Now, it's a lot of colonial speak, but here's what it means. Let us raise a standard. Let us raise this Constitution and do this one thing right. Because it's not about us. We don't know what God is going to do, but we know this. The government we are establishing is established for the sole purpose of protecting these rights. And we have enumerated these rights in the Declaration of Independence. It is the right to life, liberty, and they changed it because they were anti-slave. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. But those were only the three. Among these rights are. So they had to go back and enumerate the really important rights. That you have a right to keep and bear arms, and it shall not be infringed. That you have a right to practice your faith as you wish. That you have a right to free speech, to assemble, to petition your government. You have a right for the government to stay out of your business. We don't know what God is going to do with these rights. Remember, man had never had anything but fire. The greatest invention was the wheel and fire. For 5,000 years, people lived basically the same way with very little improvement. And he knew, if we protect these rights, God's going to do something amazing here. And not without us, but through us. Because he gave you something special. He gave me something special. And you, and you, and you. And it's all different. But with these rights, we can accomplish things. We will accomplish electrifying and bringing the sunlight into buildings. We will see moving pictures, not on television, but on a phone. And you will be able to see live things that are happening anywhere in the world. You'll be able to communicate and sell your goods and services to anyone in the world. Someday, my father said to me before he died, "Glenn, I do not envy you for the times in which you live. I don't know how you will solve the problems that we have created. But know this, when I was a boy, I never thought man could ever walk on the moon." George Washington knew that if we raise this standard, we do it right, the rest of the world will look to it. And it will change the entire world. Let us raise a standard to which the wise and the honest shall repair. To which the wise, meaning repair doesn't mean to fix. It means that some point there will be a time in American history, off into the future, where people will be confused. They will have somehow or another lost sight of the Constitution, and they won't know what's wrong with their country. The government will grow so powerful and they won't know how to stop it. They will be told lie after lie after lie, and our president shall become a king. But at that time, George Washington promised in that room, the wise and the honest, if we do this one thing right, will run to the Constitution. There they will find their shelter. That's you. That's us. George Washington saw this time. We are looking for new answers. There is nothing new under the sun, but there is something we haven't tried in over 100 years, and that's the rule of law under the Constitution of the United States of America. And the last thing he said that night, let us raise a standard to which the wise and the honest can repair. The event is in the hand of God. Let me ask you a question. I want you to ask your fellow patriots. I want you to ask the people who see the world we thought just like us, and now we're polar opposites. Do you believe in the Constitution? Do you believe in the principles, that those principles are what brought us here? If the answer is no, then we've got nothing to show for it. If the answer is yes, then we need to talk. The next question, do you believe that this is a divine nation? That we were founded through divine providence. That God has put his hand on us the whole time. Do you believe it? Yes or no? Did God save this country? Did God create this country? Are we living in God's country? Yes or no? Answer the question. Then we should not fear anything. We should have no fear. We may leave the summer and go into the winter, but we are winter patriots, not summer soldiers. Because if we are on God's side, who can stand against it? These are not our rights. These are his rights, not ours, his. He is the protector of those rights. We must stand in exactly where he tells us to stand. And miracles will happen. I don't care what happens tomorrow. I got to tell you, if you guys screw this up, I'm going to be pissed at you. I will tell you that Wednesday morning I will be suicidal if you guys screw this up. Don't listen to me Wednesday if you screw it up. Give me maybe 48 years. But I will tell you this. After I get over my whining and moaning, I will have as much faith as I do right now, because the government is not in charge, and these are not rights of ours to lose. And God is not finished with the freedom of all mankind, and he is not finished with the United States of America. I have to, before I go, is Blake, where's Blake? Come here, Blake. Blake brought this book about George Washington. How old are you, Blake? You're 12 years old? You going to actually read that? Good for you. Thank you. My son would be like, my daughter said to me one time, she said, Dad, do you know who we just met? I don't even remember who it was. And I said, yeah. She said, she's a New York Times best-selling author. And I said, well, I have like 18 #1 New York Times books. And she went, you do? Like she lost respect for the New York Times all of a sudden. Let me leave you with this. I come to you to ask ask as a fellow citizen for you tomorrow to go out and to vote, but bring everybody you know. Call everybody you know. It is not a coincidence to me that George Washington made a covenant on the day of his first inauguration in the building, in the church that is now known as the Church That Stood, because it's right across the street from the World Trade Center. Not a single pane of glass was broken in that building. It is the building where he, for 4 hours, was down on his knees saying, we will be your people, you will be our God. And now, for the first time in my lifetime, I am seeing every state and every person making a difference. I see that God has arranged this so there's nobody out. Am I going to withdraw my hand of protection? Is this promise, is this covenant that you made with me, is it over? Because you're rejecting me, you are mocking me, you are driving me out of your society, and I have been patient with you, my little ones. You have to make the choice. And you have the opportunity to once again change the world. And the way you do it is you have a president, when he raises his hand, he says, I will protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. A guy who knows to make America great again, he holds back the hordes of the government and lets the people free to make the country great. The man who will do it, ladies and gentlemen. No. I almost blew that. I thought I was going to introduce Ted Cruz. Faked you out. I want to thank you all for coming. He's coming out. I think you also have your great governors here too. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please tell your friends tomorrow, go out and vote. God bless.
Glenn Beck! That's what I want to be when I grow up. So, anybody ready to go home yet? Listen, we're talking a lot about leadership, not just putting words to things, not just saying I want something to be great again, but saying I realize we need to pay the price to make it constitutional so that it can be great again. Somebody that does it even now, because in a little bit we're going to meet our next President of the United States. But right now, it is my distinct honor to introduce to you a person that I have come to know, not just as my governor and not just as somebody I interview, but as a true friend. And he is the genuine article. And he has taken an awful lot of slings and arrows for you and me and will continue to do so. Our current and next governor of the state of Indiana, Mike Pence.
Is this a great time to be a Hoosier or what? Thank you all for being here today. It is a time for choosing. And all of America is looking to the people of Indiana to make a choice in tomorrow's primary election. I've made my choice. And I choose to support Senator Ted Cruz as the Republican nominee for President of the United States of America. Ted Cruz is a principled conservative who has fought for the Reagan agenda every day of his life, and he will defeat Hillary or the burn in November of 2016. You know, I chose to weigh into this election because to lead is to choose. I'm a Reagan conservative. I actually became a Republican in my teenage years because I was inspired by the voice and the leadership of the 40th President of the United States. The Reagan agenda articulated a vision for America following the malaise of the 1970s that was built on the principles of less government, less taxes, less regulation, traditional values, and a strong American military. And that agenda revived the nation. Throughout my career, I've sought to stand by those principles in my service as your governor and in my service in Washington, D.C. I've also chosen to stand by men and women who've championed those principles in their lives and in their careers. In this race, that man is Senator Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is a principled conservative who's dedicated his career to advancing the Reagan agenda. Now, as some of you remember, I know something about opposing runaway federal spending in Washington, D.C. I did a little bit of it myself in my day. And it's a lonely job. And it's a tough job. Well, Ted Cruz has shown the courage of his convictions by fighting runaway federal spending in Washington, D.C., taking on the leadership of his own party with courage, and he led the fight to repeal Obamacare lock, stock, and barrel. I've also been inspired by this principled conservative's knowledge and devotion to the Constitution of the United States of America, the freedoms and liberties that are enshrined in our Bill of Rights, and his unwavering stand for the sanctity of human life. So I stand before you today, humbled to be able to make an introduction and to express my unwavering support for his conservative principles, his courage, and his character. I support a man I hope and pray will be the 45th President of the United States of America, Senator Ted Cruz.
God bless the great state of Indiana. What an incredible privilege to be with you. What an incredible privilege to be with such a tremendous array of patriots fighting to save our great nation. God bless Indiana's great governor, Mike Pence. What a strong, principled conservative. What a happy warrior. Governor Pence is someone who understands that free market principles work, that when you reduce the burdens of government on small business, it creates millions of new high-paying jobs. You know, Mike and I have spent the day barnstorming the state of Indiana, traveling across the state, campaigning together, and I will tell you, I am deeply honored, I am humbled to be standing shoulder to shoulder with Mike Pence, asking for the support of the Hoosier State. And how about Glenn Beck? isn't Glenn remarkable? I love listening to Glenn. Every time I listen to Glenn, I learn from him. It's like going to school. I love it when Glenn brings out the whiteboard. When he starts going back to the first principles that built our nation. And I'll tell you, at a time when so many in Washington are governed by a spirit of fear and timidity, Glenn is fearless speaking the truth. And we are a nation that is hungry for the truth. We're hungry to restore our liberty. You know, this past week, I announced my vice presidential nominee, Carly Fiorina. And Carly is extraordinary. You know, when you sit down to think through and to choose who to name as a vice president, it may be the most serious decision any presidential candidate makes, because you're telling the American people this individual is prepared to step in at a moment's notice and serve as president, to honor the promises and commitments we've made, to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, and to serve as commander-in-chief and keep this country safe. And the criteria you're looking for in a vice president are exactly the same criteria you're looking for in a president. You want someone with knowledge, with judgment, and with character. First of all, you want someone who understands the economy, where jobs come from, and how to bring them back. You know, Carly's journey through the business world has been remarkable, starting as a secretary and climbing up to becoming CEO of the largest technology company in the world, the first woman CEO of a Fortune 20 company in history. You want a leader who understands the economy and who understands the world, understands the threats that face us. But you also want a leader with good judgment. Having spent a lot of time barnstorming with Carly, working side by side with her, I can tell you she is someone of careful, sober judgment that thinks through issues. You don't want someone who is rash, who is hot-headed, who is liable to go off at the latest Twitter storm. In talking about somebody who would have his finger on the button, you want someone who is measured, who has judgment, who has common sense. And you know, the third characteristic you want in a president is character. Character may be the single most important characteristic. Does this person tell the truth? Do they stand for principle? Do they have principles? Do their views move like a weather vane? One morning it's one thing, in the afternoon it's something else, in the evening it's a third. Or are they steady and constant? Do they know what they believe? And I'll tell you, one of the moments Carly most impressed me was seeing in the course of the debates how Carly stands up to bullies. Every one of us has experienced in life, going back to grade school, that a bully isn't strong. A bully is weak. A bully is scared. A bully needs affirmation for their own insecurities. And so they find someone they think is weaker than they are, and they pick on them because it makes them feel tough. And the only response that ever works with a bully is to pop them in the nose. And Carly is someone who stands up to bullies, whether they're named Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or Vladimir Putin. And my favorite thing about Carly she utterly terrifies Hillary Clinton. I can just picture Hillary thinking about Carly, tossing and turning and tossing and turning in her jail cell. This next election is about three critical issues: jobs, freedom, and security. Let's start with jobs. I want to take a minute. I want to speak to all the single moms who are here, who are working 2 and 3 part-time jobs, who've seen your hours forcibly reduced to 28, 29 hours a week because Obamacare kicks in at 30. I want to talk to all the truck drivers, all the plumbers and mechanics, all the steel workers and coal miners, the union members, the men and women with calluses on your hands, who've seen wages stagnating year after year. Cost of living keeps going up, and yet somehow your paycheck doesn't seem to keep pace. I want to talk to all the young people. And by the way, Hillary, Bernie, take a look at all the young people. All the young people coming out of school, you got student loans up to your eyeballs, and you're scared. Can I find a job? What does the future hold for me? And you know, the media, they try to tell us this is the new normal. This is as good as it gets. Well, let me tell you, that is a complete and utter lie. It's easy to talk about making America great again. You can even print that on a baseball cap. But the real question is, do you understand the principles and values that made America great in the first place? The heart of our economy isn't Washington, D.C. The heart of our economy is small businesses all across the United States of America. And Ronald Reagan understood, and before him, John F. Kennedy understood, that when you cut taxes and lift regulations on small businesses, that the result is millions and millions of new high-paying jobs. I intend to follow the path that was blazed by Reagan and JFK. We're going to get the federal government off the back of the necks of small businesses. Now, my opponent in this race, Donald Trump, has promised a massive 40% tax increase, a massive 40% tariff that every Hoosier would pay every time you go to the store to purchase any goods. Now, the Trump 40% tax increase would put this country into a recession. And as for me, I don't think Hoosiers are undertaxed. I think you're paying too much taxes, and as the president, I'm going to cut your taxes. As president, we are going to pass a simple flat tax where every one of us can fill out our taxes on a postcard. 10% for each person here, and when we do that, we should abolish the IRS. We're going to repeal every word of Obamacare. Obamacare is the biggest job killer in America, and in its place, we're going to pass common sense health care reform that makes health insurance personal and portable and affordable and keeps government from getting in between us and our doctors. And we're going to rein in the EPA. And the federal regulators who have descended like locusts on farmers and ranchers and small businesses, killing jobs all across this country. We're going to end the Obama administration's war on coal, and we are going to develop our energy resources and stop sending billions of dollars to nations that hate us. And we're going to stop amnesty and secure the borders and end sanctuary cities and end welfare benefits for those here illegally. And let me tell you what's going to happen when we do all of that. We're going to see millions and millions of new high-paying jobs. We're going to see jobs coming back from Mexico, jobs coming back from China. We're going to see manufacturing jobs coming back to the state of Indiana. We're going to see wages rising once again. We're going to see young people coming out of school with 2, 3, 4, 5 job offers. That's what this election is all about. Morning in America again. The second critical issue at stake in this election is freedom. Just a few weeks ago, with the passing of Justice Scalia, it underscored for all of us that it's not just one but two branches of the federal government that hang in the balance. If you value religious liberty, the right of each of us to live according to our faith and according to our conscience, to seek out and worship God Almighty with all of our hearts, minds, and soul without the federal government getting in the way. If you value the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms and protect your family, then we are just one liberal justice away from a radical 5-justice left-wing majority that would strip those rights and the rest of the Bill of Rights from millions of Americans across this country. Now, you know, 2 debates ago, Hugh Hewitt asked all of us about religious liberty and the Supreme Court. And Donald Trump turned to me. He said, "Ted, I've known a lot more politicians in my life than you have." Well, in that, he's clearly correct. Donald Trump has spent 40 years supporting liberal Democrats in office. I have no experience with that. But Donald continued. He said, "Ted, when it comes to the Supreme Court, when it comes to religious liberty," he said, "Ted, you got to learn to compromise. You got to learn to cut deals with the Democrats and to go along to get along." Well, let me be very clear to the men and women of Indiana. I will not compromise away your religious liberty. And I will not compromise away your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. The third critical issue in this election is security. For 7 years, we've had a president who abandons our friends and allies and who shows weakness and appeasement to our enemies. You know, again, 2 debates ago, Donald Trump explained to all of us if he were president, he would be neutral between Israel and the Palestinians. Well, let me be very clear. As president, I will not be neutral. America will stand unapologetically with the nation of Israel. And anyone who can't tell the difference between our friends and our enemies, who can't tell the difference between Israel and radical Islamic terrorists who want to kill us, that says something about their fitness and judgment to be commander-in-chief. And today, we need a commander-in-chief. For 7 years, we've seen our military weakened, readiness undermined, morale plummeting. And you know, as a nation, we've seen this before. We've seen another left-wing Democratic president, Jimmy Carter, weaken and undermine the military. And then in January 1981, Ronald Reagan came into office. And what did Reagan do? Reagan cut taxes. He lifted regulations. The economy took off. Millions and millions of new high-paying jobs. That in turn generated trillions in new revenue for the federal government. And he used that revenue to rebuild our military, to bankrupt the Soviet Union, and to win the Cold War. I intend to do the exact same thing with radical Islamic terrorism. We're going to repeal Obamacare, pass a flat tax, rein in the regulators, stop amnesty. And the effect is going to be millions and millions of new high-paying jobs, manufacturing jobs coming back to Indiana, wages rising again, opportunity. That's going to generate trillions in new revenue for the federal government, and we will use that revenue to rebuild our military so it remains the mightiest fighting force on the face of the planet. No longer will our military be governed by political correctness. We will have a commander-in-chief who stands up and says to the world, we will defeat radical Islamic terrorism. We'll have a president willing to utter the words, radical Islamic terrorism. And you know, one of the saddest things we've seen over the last 7 years has this president sending our fighting men and women into combat with rules of engagement so strict that their arms are tied behind their backs, that they cannot fight, they cannot win, they cannot defeat their enemies. That is wrong. It is immoral. And mark my words, in January 2017, it will end. To every soldier and sailor and airman and Marine, and for that matter, to every police officer and firefighter and first responder, the days of a president who doesn't respect your service are coming to an end. You will have the thanks of a grateful nation and a commander-in-chief who's got your back. So we've got 28 hours to go. In 28 hours, the Indiana primary will be over. 28 hours. You know, this election, it's been an amazing journey. We started with 17 candidates on the Republican side, an amazingly talented, young, diverse, dynamic field. What a contrast with the Democrats. You know, the Democratic field consists of a wild-eyed socialist with ideas that are dangerous for America and the world, and Bernie Sanders. And on the Republican side, the primary has done its job. It has narrowed the field. As we stand here today, there are two and only two candidates who have any plausible path to winning the Republican nomination: me and Donald Trump. And at this point, the entire country is looking to the state of Indiana. Indiana has a national platform, has a national megaphone. And it is a choice, a very basic choice. Do we get behind a campaign that is based on yelling and screaming and cursing and insults and anger and hatred? Or do we continue to unify behind a positive, optimistic, forward-looking, conservative campaign? Based on real policy solutions to the problems facing this country, real policy solutions to bringing jobs back to America, bringing manufacturing jobs back to Indiana, raising wages. We are seeing Republicans coming together and united. I am proud to stand with Governor Mike Pence and with Carly Fiorina and with Mike Lee and with Glenn Beck and with Mark Levin and with Hoosiers across this great state. Now, the mainstream media desperately wants this race to be over. You may have noticed if you turn on any television station, every talking head on TV says Donald Trump has won. You know, yesterday I did one of the Sunday shows where one of the hosts asked me no fewer than 9 times, will you please support Donald Trump? I said, listen, I appreciate your effort to lobby for Mr. Trump, but we're going to beat Donald Trump. And if you're here today and you're undecided, if you're at home and you're undecided, you ought to ask, why is it that the mainstream media, when every network executive is a hardcore partisan liberal Democrat, why does the mainstream media so desperately want Donald Trump to be the Republican nominee? Why did John Boehner tell you that he thinks I'm the devil? But Hillary Clinton is wonderful and Donald Trump is his texting and golfing buddy. You should ask yourself, why is John Boehner saying you need to vote for Donald Trump? If you're fed up with the corruption in Washington, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are both Washington insiders who've been part of the problem for decades. And I could not be more encouraged that this entire race, that it is the good people of the Hoosier State that are going to have the opportunity to make this decision, that it is going to be the Midwestern common sense, the sound judgment of the state of Indiana. The mainstream media has told everyone here Manhattan has spoken, and so you've got to accept their choice for president. But let me tell you where we are right now. In Indiana, we are neck and neck. This race is tied in Indiana. It is 100% about turnout. We've got 28 hours till the polls close. I want to ask each of you, are there 5 people you could pick up the phone and call to get to vote tomorrow? Are there 10? Are there 15? Are there 20? All of us are here for the same reason. You're here for the same reason I am. Because you love your kids, because you love your grandkids, and we don't want to look our kids in the eye and say, we sat idly by while the greatest country in the history of the world slipped from our grasp. As Reagan powerfully told us, freedom, it's not passed down in the bloodstream from one generation to the next. Every generation must stand and fight to preserve it, or one day we will be forced to answer to our children and our children's children. What was it like when America was free? This election, our country is at the edge of a cliff. We are staring down into the abyss. And the entire country, millions of Americans are praying for this state right now. The entire country is depending on the state of Indiana to pull us back from this cliff. And look around the room right now. There are about 2,000 people here. If everyone here got 10 other people to vote tomorrow, just 10, that would be 20,000 votes represented right here. That is enough to control the outcome of the primary here in Indiana. "28 hours to find 10 more votes tomorrow." I'll tell you this, if we continue to unite, we will win this Republican nomination. And if we continue to unite the country, we will win the general election. We will beat Hillary Clinton, and we will turn this country around. It took Jimmy Carter to give us Ronald Reagan. And I am convinced the most long-lasting legacy of Barack Obama is going to be a new generation of leaders in the Republican Party who stand and fight for liberty, who stand and fight for the Constitution, and who stand and fight for the Judeo-Christian values that built this great nation. Thank you, and God bless you.
That was Texas Senator Ted Cruz as he continues to embark on his bid for the White House as the Indiana primary takes place tomorrow across the Hoosier State. Stay tuned to WOWO.com for exclusive election coverage throughout the Indiana primary. And make sure you tune into Fort Wayne's Morning News coming up on Tuesday morning from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. with Fort Wayne's Morning News and the Pat Miller program every weekday from 3 to 6, all on News Talk 1190 WOWO, 107.5 FM, and now in HD on 97.3 HD2. Once again, your election headquarters, News Talk 1190 WOWO, 107.5 FM.